Hello everyone, I'm Duncan White. I'm the managing editor of the International Fire and Safety Journal, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Nicola John from FDM. Nicola, hello, how are you?
Good morning, I'm really well, thanks Duncan. How are you too?
Oh, it's always a pleasure for me to sit down and talk with professionals in the industry and learn a little bit about what's going on in their world. So, Nicola, tell me a little bit about you and your role within FDM.
Well, I'm the founder of FDM and the managing director. Really, it's a culmination of my career sort of rolled into one. Not that when you go through your career, you realise you're going to use some of those skills at some times. However, that's what's happened with FDM. So I was back in the 90s, I'm not old, back in the 90s, I was a trainer for a private training provider, a management trainer and also an MBQ assessor. And I then left that business and went into construction. So my early career was being the general manager and then managing director of a building maintenance company. And we used to work for social housing landlords and local authorities, doing all sorts of building maintenance work, from 24-hour call out, electricians, plumbers, doors, windows, routine changes to properties, or more planned works like kitchens, bathrooms, door installations. And from that, we built a door factory and a door business as well. So that was a standard composite door business. And then we went into fire doors. So that's where my background of building maintenance and fire doors came into play, really. And I did that for over 20 years. Post Grenfell sat on the Association of Composite Door Manufacturers panel with the government, talking about doors and testing and what went wrong. And then I went into consulting for a while. And I was asked to have a look at the viability of a fire door inspection business when the Building Safety Act came into play, 2022. And they asked me to have a look at, landlords were looking for inspections of products, and the manufacturers, which is sort of my industry, weren't able to offer that. And I was looking at the viability of that. But I realised then that there was not really adequate training out there. Nothing had changed since Grenfell on the training front for fire doors, for inspectors, installers, maintainers, and thought that I could couple that training experience that I had working for a private training provider and my industry experience together and provide something different on the fire door training market. So that's what I did. And that's where FDM really came from.
Wow, you've got a great background, and your previous role certainly gave you great foundations for building the latest role and FDM. So for the listeners, let's look at fire door training and what the landscape for training looks like in 2026.
So we've moved on since we started. So the idea of FDM came in 2022. We built our practical training centre in 2023 and launched early 2024. And what we tried to do was to build a practical training centre for practical people. So your installers, inspectors, maintainers had historically been trained either in classrooms or online. And that training, I felt, when I looked at the Hackett report, you looked at what was out there, legislation changes and things there, that we needed to provide something that was a little bit more concrete for people. And that came in the form of a practical training centre. So for us, 2026 looks like we've just got into partnership actually with the Fire Protection Association, so the FPA, and built FDM number 2 in their new premises. And it looks like practical training centres where people can come, spend the day, 2 days, 3 days, however long their course is, and learn new skills, share knowledge, meet other people in industry to be able to build up that network and work with other people and learn a new way of developing their competency piece, their jigsaw of competence in training centres, I think, where they can support that practical application. So a lot of our collaborators that supply product to us supply products, their test evidence, their manufacturer's guidance. We have component rooms. We have lots of different products there for people to get stuck into. So when they're practical trades like the inspectors, installers and maintainers, it's a little bit like the Madame Tussauds, the fire door world. They get to come in and see lots of different things, work with them, learn the nuances of different materials and different products and what you can and can't do with different things. And we really have opened up the training world, I hope, in a really practical but new and exciting way. And that has led to the fire door training sort of sector changing slightly. So when we first opened FDM, there was very much this classroom-based approach out there, or online CPD approach, which has its place. But I'm hoping that we have instigated this ball rolling of more practical, skills-based training within the industry.
It's certainly there's nothing better than interacting and training with your peers within the industry, and like you say, networking during that builds those relationships that will go on to last a lifetime, and also sets up the I'm not quite sure, let me ring so and so who I was on the course with. And I like the analogy about the Madame Tussauds of fire doors, and like you say, no two doors are the same. You can buy 5 or 6 doors of the same style and design, but if you hang them differently or treat them differently, then they're going to be unique in their own way. And you talk about there is a place for online learning, there is a place for classroom learning, but the only way that I've ever been able to really grasp knowledge and understanding is by actually touching, feeling, and having a go. And when you look at what I will call the traditional craftsman carpenter who goes out there and installs fire doors properly, they're the ones that need to educate and teach those that are just taking it up, because it can be done properly, it can be done badly, and there's only a few sequences in between the two. And fire doors aren't cheap these days, and you're not going to be flavour of the month if you ruin a fire door because you've not taken the opportunity to learn how to do it properly. So, to me, what you're looking have achieved there and looking to expand upon that hands-on training is got to be the way forward. So, congratulations on that. Certainly gets my vote, and I'm sure there's a lot of our listeners out there thinking this is the piece of the jigsaw that we need to really put our tools and knowledge together. So we talk about compliance, and we're very much in a regulatory landscape now where various pieces of legislation come and go, and you talked about the Building Act. So what are the main compliance challenges that we think that the organisations within the fire door world are going to see in 2026?
I think I'm in a great position because I've been that person who's employed installers before. I've worked with clients in the both in the social housing and in the commercial sectors that need to purchase doors and look at that. What we tried to do as well is to provide a course. We're very sector led, so we only provide training around fire doors. We'll never go out into the further safety world because we're specialists in that area. But what we do is to provide courses from everybody, from your procurer, your builder's merchant, or your procurer who's buying either door sets or components, all the way through to your trades on site. So we have a course that's designed for each part of the chain. And I think that's really important because it is challenging out there for organisations who are not expert in that field to know what exactly they need, what their staff would need in relation to compliance or competence. And we can help with that. As I say, we've got this some of courses now and qualifications on top of that. So we've been writing some industry-led qualifications. So we have some online CPDs. So we have all of the pieces that people might need for jigsaw, what I would call a competency jigsaw, so that they can ensure that their staff are compliant and that they're providing a compliant service. But we can help people navigate that, which I think is important, because if you're an employer of a tier 1 contractor, a builder's merchant, if you're a manufacturer, but you're employing installers, whatever your responsibility in that chain is, then it is quite difficult to navigate, I think. And that's where specialist contractors can come to us as a specialist training provider. We can give some support.
The bit that stood out there amongst others was the procurement process. This is an area of specialism that many organisations don't understand and treat with contempt. And I've seen this over my time within the fire service and now the wider fire industry, is that going back to my fire service days, there was a uniform role within procurement. They didn't teach anything about procurement. It was you were working alongside the stores officer. The stores officer said, "Oh, we need to buy some salvage sheets." Okay, all right, go and buy some salvage sheets. So based on that very loose description, you could go to B&Q. There are other builders, merchants and DIY places available, just in case anybody says that I'm plugging B&Q. But you can go down there and buy something for $3.99. It'll probably last 5 minutes, and it certainly wouldn't be suitable and sufficient to undertake the role of salvage within the fire service. But it's like when you go and tender, it's that need to specify how long you wish it to last, what the material is, whether it needs to be flame retardant, does it need to meet a certain British or European standard, and this whole area is where, because people think it's just a case of picking up a catalogue and buying something rather than doing your research. And I was taught many years ago that you need to look at how you work out the whole life cost of something. So it may well be that you buy a high visibility jacket from the local's builder's merchant that may well meet the requirement, but it's only guaranteed for one wash. Whereas you can buy something that's guaranteed for 50 washes that may be more expensive for the original purchase, but over the whole life cost of the product, then it becomes much more cost effective. And this is where what you're looking to do there in terms of that procurement and that whole life cycle from purchase through to installing, maintenance, and repeat the cycle in terms of maintenance ongoing, is rather than somebody ringing up and say, "I need a door set, I need a door," that person on the end of the phone would then be able to say, "Okay, what specifications that need to meet, what the use of the door, blah blah blah." And yeah, that's to be applauded. You're proving that homework cycle and the preparation for what you're bringing to market is fit for purpose, and people have got the knowledge and understanding to say, when you talk to Nicola and FDM, you know that the research has been done prior to you just trying to sell them something. So that's to be applauded, and you must be seeing that on a regular basis.
Yeah, not obviously. What we sell is training. So we don't sell any products, we sell training. But in procurement of fire doors, there's all different types of people who procure. They might be procuring a door set. They might be procuring, several hundred or thousand of them over a planned maintenance schedule. They might be looking for one as a replacement. They might be looking for parts for something. So there's so many avenues around procurement that need to be addressed. What was engineered and tested in the first place? What can and can't be changed on a door set in order to complete that compliance? Over the life cycle of a door, you're quite right. We might change letter plate 2, 3, 4 times over 25 years life cycle of a door. It might be that cylinders and locks are changed far more often because it's in a social housing setting and tenancies have changed. So there's all sorts of considerations on procurement, not only just of the door set, but of products that go alongside that in order to keep that door compliant for a long period of time. And so we see on that particular course, we get builders merchants, but we also get people who are trying to purchase door sets from a landlord's perspective, commercially or residentially, so that they learn more about what actually do they want and what do they want to buy so that they can keep that life cycle and the longevity up. What questions do they need to ask manufacturers, or in their tender documents, what questions do they need to ask? And make sure of so that they get the right partner and the right fit for those products that they're going to purchase. So it's a really big sort of sector, that procurement piece, that feeds into your installers, your inspectors, your maintainers, and the people that come afterwards to either make the product or to keep it safe and compliant as the life cycle goes on.
And it's the start of the process. So if it's not done properly at the beginning, then I could just imagine a door set, doors, and all the door furniture arriving on site, ready to be fitted, only for the carpenter to say, "This is not what we need. This is not fit for purpose." So that the ability for the procurement professional. There are procurement professionals out there, but there are also a lot of people that are doing a bad job of trying to convince us that they're professional. Need to know and get that specified very early and get that right first time, every time. Otherwise, it just delays the process and takes the whole schedule out of kilter, which is hugely frustrating for everybody. Training, to me, every day is a school day. This is why I love talking to people in the industry. Is I learn about so much differing things. So high quality training that you're providing through FDM. How does that improve the real world fire door performance and safety? What are we seeing different with high quality training being undertaken prior to somebody going out there and doing the job for real?
Well, you touched on it, because knowledge is power, isn't it? So the more knowledge that you have, the better, I think, your judgments, that you can make. So it doesn't matter what role you're in, but the more you learn, and as you say, every day is a school day, I learn something every day. And if I need to know something, I go looking. I'm really inquisitive, so I want to know those things. But knowledge is power. And I think what we aim to do at FDM, and I think, if we all thought about this, it would be a far better place. But what we want to make sure is that people are safe. They're safe in their homes. They're safe in their workplaces. So if you're an installer, an inspector, or a maintainer, or whoever you are, and you come into FDM, we make no apologies to show some of the disasters that have happened, like Grenfell, and things where things have gone wrong. We like to show that so that people understand that their job is important, what they're doing makes a difference, that if you're working on Friday afternoon at 2:00, you should do the same job as Tuesday morning at 9:00, that you are in charge of a life-saving product. It's a potentially life-saving product. And when you go home to your home in the evenings, you have done a job that was, could save somebody's life should a disaster happen in their property. So we're very keen to stress that. And I don't think in previous years of training or previous decades of training that has been enough of an agenda item. So for me, high quality training is not just about what's in my syllabus and what's on the courses, but also about this element of responsibility, which comes under the behaviours in the competency framework, which is that everybody should be taking more care of that. The other thing I think that we do that's different, when I was looking at how the business was going to function and how we were looking at FDM and what were we going to do, the Hackett report played a really big part of my business planning. What did we do wrong as a built environment? What was she criticising in that Hackett report? Where were the recommendations? Even if they weren't law yet, what were the recommendations? Government did their response paper and said, we're going to take on board all these as recommendations. So how is the landscape of training, at built environment, construction going to go in the future? And the Hackett report, one of the criticisms in there was that people were too insular in their jobs. They were just thinking about their role and thinking, well, I've just done my bit. So what we try to teach is the trade before and the trade after. So if you're coming on a course about installation, I want you to know about fire doors. I want you to know about how they're tested, how they're engineered. Why is it such a good product and it passed the test and it's going to withstand the fire for a particular period of time? And what happens if you change something on there? What difference would it make to the performance of that product? And can you change certain things and why can't you change other things? And so that more holistic approach to training and getting them to think about before, afterwards. And the afterwards is often the householder and the person who's living in the property. And if you're installing, what information do you give them? Do you tell them the closer is critical, that when they leave and if it doesn't close, then the smoke is going to be able to travel around the building? Because when you're in a, as you know, as an ex-firefighter, when you are in a disaster situation, you're not thinking about closing the door, lifting the handle, you're leaving the property. So we're trying to get them to think a little bit differently, increase the knowledge that they have about other parts of the supply chain so that they're not working very insularly or in a silo, and also that they know that what they do really matters. And that, I think, helps this safety outcome.
Yeah, it certainly does. And it's also getting across to the installers the value of what they've got and what they're working with, because fire doors aren't a cheap piece of kit anymore. They are extremely expensive, and one of the areas within the construction, I think, that we've got slightly wrong at the moment is you're seeing pressure put on that they've got to do so many in a day. They've got to hang so many doors, but how long does it actually take to hang a fire door properly? And this is where if it's not done properly, then in effect you've wasted the investment that you've put in there, and you are putting the compliance at risk, and you're putting the person at the end of the chain who's going to end up living or working in that area protected by a fire door that isn't fit for purpose. So, like you say, it's knowing the whole life cycle of a building and which part you play as the installer maintainer of that door, and how that's going to really enhance life safety. So, yeah, it's a great way of doing things. So we talk about competence, and I think at times we talk too loosely about competence, and people say they're competent, but not really understanding the meaning of the word. So what does it look like? So in the fire door world, what does competence look like from installation, inspection, and then the ongoing maintenance perspective?
Well, people ask me this quite a lot, and a lot of employers ask me this. And I think sometimes people think if they came on one course or do one qualification or do one thing, that makes them competent. And unfortunately, I'm always here to disappoint them, because my view on competence is that it's like a never-ending jigsaw. So those jigsaw pieces in your competence framework of your own, for you personally, come from all different places. So depending on where you are in your journey as a trade or as a person within your industry, depends on what your competency jigsaw looks like. You're right at the beginning, it's going to be pretty empty, isn't it? And you've got lots of pieces to fill up. So you need to do some, skills training, some practical training. You need to increase your knowledge. You need more experience. You've not done much yet. So if you're right at the beginning of that journey, you've got lots of pieces of the jigsaw to fill in. And if you're working with a organisation that's looking after you and looking after your training and your journey, they're going to give you a mentor. They're going to give you those things that you need to help you along your journey and your competency journey. If you're already been in the industry for a long period of time, you might have lots of those jigsaw pieces filled, but we've just had quite a lot of legislation changes, products change all the time, testing of products changes. So they would need to come into a training centre to learn those gaps. So what's changed in legislation? What's changed in products and how things are tested and how things perform? So even if you've got your seasoned 30 years, I've been installing fire doors for 30 years, I'm very proficient, there are going to be things that change, pieces fly out of the jigsaw, like a piece of legislation changes, and what you knew, that jigsaw piece is gone and you've got to fill it back in. So it's a very different landscape for different people. Each person's competency and their training and development plan is different. Everybody's is different from each other's, depending on life experience, job experience, what training and development you've had, what sort of mentoring you've had, and who's passed what information over to you. And I'm a firm believer that people need to take responsibility for their own personal development. So And we need to give them the tools to do that. In our industry, we've not had a pathway. We've not had anywhere that they could go and say, this is exactly what I should follow and how I should follow it. So if you look at a plumber or an electrician, there's a very specific way to become a plumber. The qualification pathway is set out. You know exactly what you can and can't do or what you should do in order to train for that. And we are developing those things within the fire door industry. And that competency piece is individual to individual people. And depending on where you are in that journey, sometimes it would be okay to do a piece of reading or an online CPD or something that will fill in that jigsaw piece. However, if you're wanting skills, you need to go somewhere like FDM and find and learn practically with lots of different products, get your hands on them, get to learn how things work together and why they don't. Similarly for knowledge and legislation, tough piece to learn by yourself if you're a practical person. So maybe come in and learn it with other people that are all in the same boat, and you can ask questions and you can really learn to your own style. And then that experience piece can be covered by vocational qualifications out in the workplace where you're demonstrating your vocational experience. And the behaviours, I think we all could do with working on our behaviours at certain times of our career. And that's learning from other people, what's right and wrong, what industry expects, what the householders and the people who are using our products would like and expect. And those elements of competence all need to come together. But I think people need to realise that they're fluid and that every year, every day, every week, you need to learn something new.
Exactly. And the other thing that stands out there to me is there's people that's been in the industry a long time, but they may have some fantastic skills, but they may well have picked up a lot of habits that aren't conducive now to the modern standards and the requirements. And this is where the young and old can work really well together. The work ethos and the work mentality that the older generation have got would be good to instill in a lot of our younger craftspeople, but also the ability to grasp the latest way of doing things that the younger people have picked up, and also really the sharing of technology as well, and not being afraid to look for advice and guidance. There's not many people in today's world that's not got a mobile phone in their pocket, which gives them access to the world's biggest supercomputer to get that advice and guidance.
And the other thing I always tell people about competence is know when your competence stops. So if you've got a ring around your competency and sitting inside that circle, you feel really comfortable and competent to do something. If you're going to step outside of that circle, always know when to say, actually, I don't know. I don't know how to do that, or I'm not quite sure, or let me go and find out, or let me go and see. Anybody I've ever employed before, installers and maintenance people, or anybody, now in FDM, if a member of staff comes to me and says, do you know what, I don't know about that, I have far more respect for somebody who says, I'm going to find out, or could you tell me, or can we have a look at that? And I do it myself. There's some, topics that, we have, and I know I don't know much about it, so I need to go and do some CPD, or I need to go and do some training myself. Knowing where your competency stops and where you need to step in with some additional learning or knowledge, I think is a really powerful tool. And I think that comes with age, doesn't it? As you get older, you feel much more confident and comfortable to say, you know what, I don't know. And when you're younger, you think, I should have known that. And that's where the danger points come in. And on some of our courses, we start the course with rate yourself. Give us a 1 to 10 on where you think you are on this subject or this knowledge. And hopefully at the end, they go up 1 or 2 points. Not expecting somebody to leap up from a 2 to an 8. You're never going to learn that in 2 days or 3 days. Or what I want you to do is to have an incremental, sort of step up each time, so that every time you're learning something new, it's like a layered approach and you're learning something on top of it. I think that's a real key with competence, is to know that you can only learn X amount, then you put it into practice, then you've got to do a bit more. And if you're out of that comfort zone, you don't feel you feel comfortable enough to put your hand up for a bit of help.
Definitely, and takes me back to what I call the old style apprenticeships, is where you would start your apprenticeship and you'd be allocated a more senior member of the team to work alongside, to advise and guide. But it soon became apparent that it was the old hand was learning as much from the apprentice as the apprentice was from the old hand, where they were sharing modern knowledge and understanding. And it's no different now, especially when it comes to technology and looking where you can find this information. But I also think that where we talk about taking responsibility for actions, that we could potentially take this one step further, that the person responsible for installing the fire door has to take responsibility for that, and the records are kept that that door was installed by X on this date. That way, they know that there is a comeback, because at the moment you've got, how many fire doors can you fit in a day? If you do so many in a week, you get a bonus. But if somebody was really honest, are they 100% sure that every single one of those doors were fit for purpose? And I'm not too sure that is the case. We don't, unfortunately, we don't see many clerks of the works anymore that we used to see in construction, where they be the eyes and the ears, making sure that everything was working properly. But we move on. But
yeah, well, if we come back to the Hackett report again, there really, just to interject, the golden thread of information that she talked about there does very much put the onus on each person, doesn't it, and each trade to do their piece, to make sure they record it correctly. And when you're talking about IT systems, some of the best ones that I'm seeing out there that are around golden thread, and we have a look at different ones on some of our courses just so that people can see what's on the market, are the ones where you take photographs of your install, you're taking, making sure that you're listing all the materials you've used, that the manufacturer's guidelines, even the manufacturer with some of the data pins now, all your manufacturer quality control of the product before it even gets to site is on this online system. And then that golden thread, if it works properly and it's working correctly, you don't even, if the door is burnt in a building, you can still see the history of that product on the cloud. And that's the future, I think, for all of the fire door supply chain.
Very much so. I think it's not just the fire door supply chain. I think it could be for everything in general, that it's that whole life cycle, as I talk about it, from first manufacture through to decommissioning and destruction. So we've had a good chat. I've learned a lot, and so looking forward, and I suppose we look to what we wish to achieve, what we want to achieve. So, in your mind, Nicola, how do you see training and competent frameworks shaping the future of fire door compliance?
So the government have got competency groups that are working on competency frameworks, and this will help, I think, even out the messaging within the industry. So this will give guidance, it will give a framework for people to work within. It will give a framework for us as training providers, but also awarding bodies, companies that employ people to work on fire doors, whether that be from manufacturer, procurement, installer, all the way through the supply chain. These frameworks are going to give us a guidance. They're going to give us that exactly what they called a framework, really, to work within. For people like ourselves, that we're in a great position to assist the government with those frameworks and with what they're doing, because we collaborate with industry. So we have a lot of manufacturers, a lot of product suppliers, anybody who supplies something within the fire door world, would be that for a full door set or a component like a slab or a closer or a cylinder. We work with collaborators. We've probably got about 70 different business collaborators now that work with us at FDM, that supply all different types of products to the centres, so that people can get that real life experience. And then we're like that linchpin, because we also see every sector in the industry. So those people who want to train and improve that competence, from your procurers right through to the trades, we also have contact from them as well now. So we get the sort of two elements of those, and we're, if you like, trying to bring them together with training. So supplying those products and collaborating, and then using those with industry to train them. So hopefully we're going to be able to work with some of those framework providers so that we can share what industry is thinking and also what is people are wanting out there. And then we'll work towards the same guidance that the frameworks come out with.
It's so refreshing to hear the passion and the willingness to make a difference. And Nicola, that is huge testament to what you're doing now and the background knowledge and understanding of the industry that you're bringing forward. Like everything, things move forward, and I'm looking forward to maybe in 6 or 12 months' time catching up again and seeing what's actually happened from Dame Judith's report and what the industry are moaning and complaining about, or whether they're actually now embracing it. But like everything, listeners, if you want more information, then you can go to fdmltd.co.uk for more information. All Nicola's details and the ability to make contact will be on there. I think all that remains for me to say, Nicola, has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to come and chat, and I've really enjoyed it, and I hope that you have too.
I have. Thank you so much for making it quite painless. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm Duncan White. I'm the managing editor of the International Fire and Safety Journal. And as you just heard, I've had the pleasure of talking to Nicola John from FDM today on this edition of Leaders in Fire and Safety podcast. Thank you, everyone.